Hello and welcome to Upstate New York. I'm Carson Cash, joined here by Ryan Blankenhorn. And unfortunately, Ryan, this is the end of me and you on this stage.
It is the end. Carson, it's been good knowing you. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not we're not dying.
No.
No, this is the second to last broadcast I'm gonna have in this booth, Carson.
Yeah, this is the last one with me.
Yeah,
I won't be on tomorrow. It'll be the pleasure of Gungeon to have your final send off. But we've got a great Overwatch matchup, as I think we've always had in this booth today. It's the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The PEC is one of PEC's finest in that mid-level, trying to take that next step to Syracuse, who sits 11-4. And Syracuse, since this new update, has really not been the team you're hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot going on with this update. There's a lot of different things that are happening with the sub-role sections, with the 5 new characters. There's just a lot going on, and we've always talked about this when it comes to Syracuse. They are a good team, but they've always been a slower team to sort of get the jump on things. And that isn't a bad thing, but it has definitely been at the detriment of Syracuse from time to time. And because of that reasoning, it has been a struggle for Syracuse in some of the matches. Obviously, they've had good ones, but they've had some not so good ones either, sort of keeping themselves in that 4th seed right now because they're really the powerhouses like Ohio State, Utah, and Boise just sort of sitting up there really understanding what they want to do with the meta and sort of playing it to their own. You take a look at a team like Boise, they play what they want to play compared to Syracuse that likes to play a little bit more on the meta.
Yeah, and especially for Syracuse, they're 2-1 in their first semester of the PEC against those top teams, but now they're 0-3, and that's a difficult spot in the second semester to understand, hey, this Syracuse squad is very good. They're very talented. We know that they have the players to succeed at as high of a level as anybody else. We know they could win the PEC when they are at their best. Yep. It's kind of at this point depending on when are they going to get there. When will that boat arrive?
Yeah, and I think this is not their last match by any means. This is their second to last. They've had some rescheduling with Kansas, so that's going to go forward as well. But the good thing for the Syracuse squad is they get this sort of time to really solidify what they want to do and really solidify how they want to play the games going into Vegas here in the next few weeks. This is their chance to really solidify that for themselves.
Yeah, and we'll take a little look at last week. Luckily, Syracuse's really their opponents have been very light and easy for what's been going on because they've really been struggling. Mac and Baylor was a pretty mismatch, but I mean it's a Baylor squad that took a lot out of the Syracuse squad, a surprising amount, but it was pretty much a rollover for the Orange, who found their way all the way through the Bears. It was a very difficult one for the Bears to get adjusted to just how fast Syracuse was playing, but as you're seeing, the meta's kind of weird. Nobody really knows what they're doing. Baylor's kind of playing this off meta, trying to beat Syracuse, who's also off meta, and it's getting more and more complicated and becoming less and less of a team shooter and more like a team shooter that is also a MOBA and also RuneScape at the same time, where there's so many different things you now have to pay attention to that it's going to come down to a long time between updates, hopefully for players to understand the meta and learn what's the best and learn what's the best thing overall. And if it keeps being short with these patch notes, what's going to happen is Overwatch is going to become far more not luck-based, but comfortability with what kit you're using and the potential of your kit. And as is always, he's been a scary presence the entire time for your entire section. Saint is here, who Prod just told me to go sit down. It's actually Prod going to tell him to sit down because he actually has a game to play.
It's okay, it happens. But one of the best things about this Syracuse squad and about the metas that they've been playing is they've been really experimenting with that Mizuki, Lucio, Ramatra composition. That sort of weird brawl with very low healing output but crazy pressure. And it's definitely taken teams by surprise. I mean, you take a look at how they played it against Utah. They played very well with that sort of Mizuki style with Ramatra. Completely caught them off guard. They got the not the map win, but the round win, and it took Utah some time to adjust. Then you moved into how they played up against Baylor, and they did just as well, right? They played the composition. Baylor didn't know how to change it, and it was or how to defend against it, I should say, and it was really, really good coming out from Syracuse. So that specific composition, I really want to see Syracuse start to polish a little bit more, because I think it's something that if they can bring that into Vegas, it will be something that is going to be very, very difficult for other teams to play up against.
Yeah, we'll put it into some March Madness terms here. We'll take a little look at B-Dog, and that's going to be one of the most interesting players, I think, for this Syracuse squad on that Mizuki, who is a very low healer. let's compare this to March Madness. So
Okay.
let's say you've got a team that runs full court press the entire time. They're not very good at defense, and that's how they're dealing with it. That's
Okay.
what Syracuse is doing. They're putting more and more pressure. But when you have that one lone defender on the top of the key who can guard their star guard, it's going to be B-Dog. The support is so important, and Mizuki is going to be doing a substantial load of the targeted work where Lucio's not going to be as able to give targeted healing to a place or another. But B-Dog, at the right moment, when he can take the example, is a great player and fits well into Mizuki, but it kind of comes down to how well does he play on certain nights. Benjamin McDonald of Bel Air, Maryland, a public relations major, will have a lot on his shoulders in that support role tonight.
Yeah, public relations graduate student. Actually, there you go. Just a little tidbit of information for you. The only grad student we have on that Syracuse Overwatch roster. So, yeah, for now. But little teaser there. But Ben came into this team brand new, right? I mean, he obviously knew some of these players. Mac as well knew some of these players. Mac and Azer had a really good connection prior to this. Ben has been around for a while, but he hasn't really played with this team. He came into this team this past year and has really shown the stakes of what he can do. And then you have players like Saint who have moved over to that main support role, and they have really done a good job at just combining their skills, but also things that they struggle with a little bit more. I mean, even when you see Syracuse playing that double flex support composition, Saint still goes back over to that Kiriko, while Ben sticks around on the Ana, which is something that we don't see from Saint very often, but they respect that Kiriko in the hands of Saint is really, really good, just as the Ana is with Ben. And so now that with this Mizuki-Lucio composition, Mizuki, a character that definitely does flex into both the flex support and the main support category, a little bit more main support coded, you still have a player like B-Dog, like Ben, who is able to play it even though it's not technically his role.
Yeah, and I think one thing for Jackson specifically is I believe he's IGLing, I believe.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing is you don't often see a support as young as Jackson who has been IGLing since the previous season. He was IGL'd in his freshman year, now into the second half of his sophomore year. He's really getting around to learning it. He's talked about how important that leadership is and the trust that leadership is to me. But we note that that's a very interesting combo of him playing off ball, him playing anywhere he needs to, him playing Hanzo. Fantastic.
Moving forward.
But it's very important for him to be involved on that healing side. It's very important that team plays around their support because they get so little of it that when they run that meta that's very press heavy, it's very aggressive. You need to understand what your team's weaknesses are, and Syracuse in higher level matchups has not done that. Minnesota today gives them a mid-level matchup where they can feel it out, but it's not safe. Minnesota has beaten a few of these higher teams. They beat Utah this semester. I mean, it's a team that shows up every day and will really bring it to you. Syracuse wiped them out in the first semester, but as I noted, 2-1 against those top three teams last semester. 0-3 right now. They need to find a way to win, and Minnesota's a good stepping stool as we head towards Vegas.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this is going to be a really good match for Syracuse to solidify and really polish what they want to run moving forward into Vegas, right? They will have Kansas next week, I believe is what they rescheduled to, but right, in general, this match against Minnesota is going to be sort of right there in the dead middle of all the teams in PEC. Kansas being a little bit higher than Minnesota in terms of where they place themselves, but at large, Syracuse has these two games to really figure out what they want to do and how they want to go forward, basically ending the season, right? That they are at the end of their season, and these two games will, I believe, seed them between 4 and 5. I don't think they'll be able to hit 3, so it's going to be between seeds 4 and 5 going into Vegas, and it's going to be a challenge for that team, right? I mean, you have a option of going up against seed 1 2 games in or not. So Syracuse really needs to solidify what they want to do, figure out what composition they want to run, how they want to run it, and go forward as such.
First map will be Ilios, and I'm seeing some absolutely absurd bans here. That is a Cassidy. Makes sense. Mac was a very good Cassidy that was completely knockout versus the Golden Gophers earlier in the season. But Syracuse banning Roadhog, and that is because, yes, Minnesota does play Roadhog. It is their primary tank, and they've really made it work in this new meta. I mean, they got to the new meta, and then they just beat Utah. So with the pro player, might I note, very odd, I believe. I believe it was Utah, but Minnesota's one of those weird teams that you're never really going to have the right preparation for because you can't even get into a pub and play their kind of stuff. They're the Northwesterns of the world if you know more into collegiate Overwatch, or Georgia Techs if you're going higher level. But Syracuse University is so good when they play on their lonesome, or when they don't play on their lonesome, but all games for them come down to, hey, how are we going to play together? How are we going to deal with something that's a little bit strange? And Minnesota, will see how strange they get. They've been going more back into regular meta in recent games. But as you're seeing, they just brought back 2016 on their side. Actually, you won't be seeing it, excuse me. It's a Zarya, Tracer, Genji.
Yeah, it's they're bringing back the composition where they're just going to poke you to death until they win the fight. And I'm not surprised to see it. And I do want to quickly mention, Carson, before we get into this matchup, you know, you mentioned March Madness, and the manager for Syracuse decided that he brought University of Tennessee Knoxville to the victory. I don't know if I agree with that, but, you know, good old Rocky Top. You have to see what happens there. That's Lawson Burnham over there on the manager side of things. But go ahead and get started here. Syracuse going to be opting in for that Emre instead of the Sojourn. That's one of the characters that we've talked about, the newer character, where in my opinion, that Emre just gives you a little bit more value than the Sojourn does. More damage as well as more capability. Azer on this Vendetta as well, going to be getting right into the fight, forcing out the bubbles from Zarya.
Just fantastic space taking from this Syracuse side, and Minnesota really getting out of their own space. What's his name goes down, the Tracer, because there's just nobody there to support them. They're moving too far ahead. They don't have their own supports there to really get a kind of poke meta off. You need to play Brawl, because for the Syracuse squad right now, I don't think their supports have enough heal, have enough distance heal, namely, to keep them alive and keep them together while they are kind of diving in and trying to find some poke damage, because it is a pretty dive DPS site on what is a poke strategy.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse gets a few percentages there, but in return, Minnesota going to find their way back into this fight. And like you said, right, you have to sort of shut this space down from the side of Minnesota, and Mac is going to be able to do that. He's back on the Sojourn now. Look for those rail shots, feeling a little bit more comfortable on the Soj instead of that Emre. Minnesota starting to fall around the side of Syracuse now.
And the notable part is it's not the supports that go down. The Orange just isolate them perfectly. Rafa has to back off for that Orange side. Nobody goes down for the Orange. They find their way finally off the map, whether they like it or not. And the Orange have themselves back into control, waiting on top for the perfect moment, and they found it. May not lease it back to Minnesota at any point. Trying to push forward now is Mac alone into this kind of stairway section with his tank. Now supporting him forward again for Mac as he dives in. Excuse me, that is Azer who dives in for that dive once more, and was almost expecting a self-destruct there as the Mac got low.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse, they need to continue to do what they did to win that previous fight. Look to isolate, use this Vendetta. A great kill onto the Genji comes out from Azer, but traded out will be Mac from the Tracers.
Onto that other side, it's Lunar up top. They move on again forward, and Azer with that ult's a good prediction to get one out there. The Zarya will take a hefty amount of damage. Lunar will finish them off. Back into that corner, shooting that Tracer, and the Orange slowed things down a little bit as they move back into this other end. Azer isolated in that corner, but nobody there to support Minnesota. They do not have the DPS to get rid of Azer when Saint finally comes around and gets them almost back to heal with a pulse.
Yeah, I'm really liking this from Syracuse, right? They're playing it patient when they need to, but they're playing to isolate and play fast when they also need to. And this is what Syracuse needs to do. The Eat goes in onto the Ilari, but she's going to be able to get that ult off, and it's going to be able to find one. Mac goes down, there goes the Beat.
The beat comes down for the Orange, as you mentioned, and it's going to give them so much space-taking ability. They use it. Zarya goes down, and in the current Overwatch meta, no tank means no win. Lunar, Saint, and Azer all collect 2 more as they contribute together. Lunar runs over what's-his-name in the last one, the Genji on point. It's a team kill almost for the Orange. They outran it by at least a millisecond for Minnesota. Their last push coming in here, Minnesota not opting to switch into any more characters with more movement. Zarya will not get there in time at this current rate, but there's a Lucio there to touch point. But no, he runs off, and Veridity is not there enough for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and it's 1-0 Orange in this brief control.
Yeah, things got a little scary. They were a little rocky at the start of that matchup, but Syracuse was able to keep themselves safe, right? They realized, all right, we're not going to be able to brawl these guys. That's what they want to do. So in return, we just need to look to isolate, and that's what you saw, especially coming out from like Lunar and Azer. They were never really engaging together. They were splitting accordingly, and Mac on that Sojourn was getting really good value, sort of sitting back, waiting for someone to get poked out of position, finding that kill. Azer keeping those supports occupied on that Vendetta as well was very, very powerful for this composition for Syracuse. And now they're feeling nice and comfortable switching to a little bit more of a full dive here. B-Dog will likely switch back over to that Kiriko unless, yep, there it is. Going to just ring out a spawn there. No changes for the side of Minnesota. Syracuse going to be Mac on Tracer this time around.
And this is, excuse me, Bash moving forward, pushing by himself. Thank you, Ryan. My red button was not on. And you have to wonder for this Minnesota squad, how are you going to deal with Mac playing Tracer like that? And how does your Tracer learn from Mac playing like that? because they have not done a fantastic job of getting space and keeping it and backing off when they need to. Mac, they're doing a very good job finding the last moment that they can stay alive, pushing forward again with their tank. Azer able to get one in the form of Veridity. Now stuck in the corner. The tank going down for Minnesota. Lost the neck. They push her off map. And Lunar's got one, but Azer goes down in the other section. Now a Tracer duel headed for point, but truly no way Minnesota can get back on here, as they now have to wait for their tank to recuperate.
Yeah, and Syracuse has a much stronger dive here, right, with that Vendetta. Just the amount of pure damage that comes out of that character, aside from the Genji, Syracuse gets to really capitalize off of that, as well as what's his name going down, the Alari. Getting the sort of the main difference for Minnesota here, where you have good poke pressure, but Syracuse is doing an incredible job keeping this pressure in, really not giving Minnesota a chance to breathe. They make it to their side of the spawn, and that's what you see is sort of coming in from this sort of full dive instead of Mac being on that Sojourn, now on this Tracer. It is just a full engage from these three players.
I mean, golly, Minnesota hasn't made it past that bridge that Azer currently stands under with Lunar, and a very good job for them so far, taking space properly. Mac nearly goes down, but as we've been seeing all night, Lunar so dominant, now taking into that other section with the tank pushing forward with the rest of this orange squad, as now there's a flank going to the other side, and they're trying their best to get around the space for the orange, but all kind of locked into this choke point by Spawn. They can't get out. I don't know why they don't just stay in Spawn. You can deal damage from there, and the orange are just kind of stuffing them. I don't have no other way to put it, and it's just it feels like it's a mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that's been really working for Syracuse is they've been really capitalizing on the pinches from Mac and Lunar. Lunar's going in from one angle, and then Mac comes in from behind and finds that value. And Azer is basically just playing, if you really want to get old here, a Reaper May composition where he's just in the front line doing massive damage, not really doing anything else. That's what Azer is serving as sort of that main source of pressure and damage from this role, while the rest of Syracuse finds their way around, they collapse, and they find those good kills 20 seconds before Syracuse takes map number 1 in a 2-0 fashion.
Yeah, and honestly for Minnesota, the biggest thing is it's just you're missing heals on your tank, you're missing heals on your support, on your DPS, because your supports just don't have the support that they need. For, I guess, that's kind of a pun technically, use the same word, I don't know if that really counts, but for Minnesota, it's just not being able to keep your tank alive, not being able to keep your central pieces alive, as Minnesota now backs, tries to get on to point. They finally get some room, they run to the right, 3 on for Minnesota as the orange slowly crawl back, but they've got themselves a team finally congested back into point. They are playing fairly away from each other, but Mac and B-Dog able to still get 2 more. Azer will finish off what should be the last, other than the tank. They get stuck into that corner and just not much to do if you are Minnesota. An unfortunate section there. They don't get out of their spawn horror percentage. 225% in these 2 games, and Syracuse with a dominant game 1 win.
Yeah, and that's what you want to see from the Syracuse squad, right? You have Minnesota, which is right there in the middle of the pack, and Syracuse is like, you can't really sacrifice any level of uncertainty.
All right, hold on. There's a Lucio play of the game on my screen.
Bang!
We go into Boop here. See him in the corner. Oh no, don't do it to him. Don't do it to him. Does he even get a kill here, or are we just getting support? Oh, there's one. It doesn't even. Wait. No, not even one. Okay, fantastic, awesome.
Good old Overwatch player of the game.
I was like, I don't remember seeing a Boop.
No,
That's because I didn't.
It's Overwatch play of the game.
It was a helpful play of the game because Mac went down there, and the orange they got through the team fight with only 1 support, and that support being Lucio. How heartwarming. But as we enter game 2 here for the Syracuse squad, what did they really do well? They played together as a team in the front line, and their supports stayed with the team when they needed to and backed off when they needed safety. That's exactly what you're looking for the Orange on those high-level matchups. It's a bit more difficult when you are playing the Fishers of the world, as I believe the Orange got eliminated by them in the NECC East quals.
I think it was St. Clair.
Yeah. There was either side of the bracket.
I think they played both, but St. Clair I think was ultimately the one that knocked him out. Which, I mean, you're ranked number 3 in the country. That, Syracuse has not had the best time up against top 10 teams in the country, and that makes sense though. I mean, you have a very, very large skill difference between like the top teams in the country, and Syracuse is like right on that bubble of top 20. It's difficult, but it's doable.
I mean, like 3 and 8 is such a big skill gap. Like you kind of just at 7 you feel different about that, but it's this Azer fella, Harris Levingston, who is
this Azer fella
really leading the Syracuse squad from Huntington, New York, and information management senior, is the captain of the Syracuse squad and is wearing glasses today. He looks very wise.
Very
kind of like
studious.
a spectacular librarian, because he's been hitting the books, I know, in this new meta and trying to learn what Syracuse can do, and he's the main reason they've settled on this team comp.
Yeah, and speaking of Azer and this team composition, of course, when you think about how Syracuse played, you're going to want to ban the Vendetta. And that is what Minnesota ends up doing. They ban that Vendetta because Azer, in round number 1, you saw a lot of Azer in the kill feed. Round number 2, not as much. And it's not because he did less. I want to make that clear. It's because, in fact, he did more, if not less. And wait, I said that wrong, but
Yeah,
you get the idea. He did more because what I was saying earlier when it came to that May Reaper composition is he kind of just sits there on a Reaper in a sense, in this case on the Vendetta, just shooting down the main choke, doing crazy damage, putting crazy pressure on the tanks, and not really letting you breathe. And because of that, it gave the ability for the Tracer, for Mac to come around and do that accordingly. So the Vendetta ban makes sense coming out from Minnesota. Syracuse, they saw that sort of niche pick coming out from them, and they're like, we don't want to deal with the Alari. So immediately got rid of that character, and now they're going to force them on a much weirder composition. Syracuse, on the other hand, this is King's Row for them. They know what they want to play. They like this Ramatra style of composition because Orisa, unfortunately, the horse is not in the best spot right now.
Yeah, I mean, I really, it is truly unfortunate. I think Ryan has just seen the team comp. I believe Saint made a miscall and ran a quick Zenyatta for a second there, but much like Orisa, Zenyatta is not in a great space in the meta.
Unfortunately
At least just not this meta. Zenyatta works in Brawl, in maybe the level lobbies I play in. But for Syracuse, it's been very good on that defensive front for the support side, specifically here on King's Row. They do a great job at the very end, at the very beginning, but kind of in the middle is where they've really struggled. We've seen them crush teams like last week against Baylor in this very first section. They're technically not good in the aggregate here on King's Row, but they are very good in the beginning and last portion, and Mac's a big reason, loves playing Sojourn here, and it's truly just apples in a barrel.
Yeah, and you see what's his name goes over to that Emre and the rest of Minnesota with this Juno Brig. They're playing for this sort of hardcore sustain brawl composition and something that they can really walk on to Syracuse with. But with Mac on this Sojourn, it's going to be hard to close that space. Syracuse backing up because they are respecting the brawl coming out from this Juno Brig, but one misuse on that utility and Syracuse walks forward. There goes the bubble, and that's what I'm talking about here, Carson.
It's a missed position. Zarya is able to back off, use the shield just enough to stay alive, but Syracuse putting so much pressure on here. You have to wonder how the supports are going to go down or when they're going to go down for Syracuse, and they don't in time. Now Mac into the back end with Genji. Dealing with a pretty rough 1v1, and it's a good job by Minnesota, who positioned very poorly, moved back into a better spot. Supports don't go down because Syracuse doesn't target it, and it's a tank and Mac gone for the Orange.
Yeah, this Wu Yang from Saint is a little bit different, right? Because you get a little bit more damage pressure coming out from the support, as well as sort of that negating ability from the dive. But because you don't have a dive coming in from the side of Minnesota, the Wu Yang doesn't do quite as much value as you want to see it do. Lunar on the Doom Fist here to contest point last second.
Trying to get back onto site for the final moment. The Orange do not want to lose this spot here. We mentioned how good they are on the choke point, how poor they've been beyond it, and this is that big portion here. Lunar is cooking with Doomfist. He don't need no tank. And on that other section, we see what's his name get also on that ult, but it's just that ult that's so good for Minnesota. That is a very rough section for the Orange, but what's his name just hit Q, and he can fly 153 meters in the air and have no damage fall off.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the strength of Emre right now in comparison to the Sojourn, is you do a little bit more damage, you have a little bit more consistency. The ultimate is frankly just better compared to where Sojourn is at the moment, but when you have, it's really a matter of preference right now, right? Because Sojourn and Emre are both very, very good picks, but it's a matter of which do you think you're going to get more value on. Obviously, Mac feeling like they're going to get more value on the Sojourn, plays the Sojourn, but that ultimate value is something to consider because you practically have Graviton Surge and a Pulse Bomb times 50 with the Emre, so it is something to be aware of.
Well, back in the other end, what's his name? Good use on the utility there, and he mentioned it's just down to preference, and what's his name has got a pretty good one. Vishkovs gets one more in the form of Azer with that Dragon Blade, and the Orange kind of just falling apart here. Nothing they can do. Lunar having to just sit and watch as the team goes down around them as well. Azer and Mac will back up and be the only Orange survivors of that team fight as Minnesota takes a good look here.
Yeah, I mean, you walk into a rally and a Genji Blade, it's not much you can do. Syracuse's Saint going to go back over to that Lucio, a little bit more comfortable for Syracuse. So they're going to be able to engage on more of a typical brawl. The name of the game is speed, and when you don't have speed and they have a Juno ring for their speed, it's hard to fight back. Mac does have the overclock, and there goes the contest for Syracuse into the Ray.
Orange trying to find their own here. It's going to be a Juno ult. That's going to give a lot of support to Minnesota, and the same issues we mentioned that this Orange squad are facing against these lower teams. It's just not coherent. They don't play together enough, and when the other squad realizes, hey, we just have to play brawl and make sure that we are keeping their DPS in check, it's been exactly that. Minnesota walking all over the Orange now. 4 minutes remaining. But we mentioned the first very few checkpoints in the last section of the Orange best. See if they can find 3 here for Minnesota.
Yeah, Syracuse back on this 3rd point. They've had really good success holding this point in the past. Mac falls low, but he's going to be able to get out alive just barely and takes out the Genji before he falls. B-Dog does have the Kitsune Rush if they choose to use it here, but what I was going to mention is how Syracuse, my biggest thing with them, why they lose that 2nd point, they spend too much time on the composition they were originally on. And I think that's one of the biggest things to consider and one of the biggest things to worry about is Syracuse basically gives away 2nd point to most teams because they stay too long on a composition. But once you get them warmed up and back in the swing of things like they are here on this Lucio, Kiri, Ramattra, Sojourner, Tracer composition, I wouldn't be surprised to see them hold for the next 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, and especially with them at this point, with how much pressure they're going to put on Minnesota here, who've kind of crumbled under it. We obviously played this game. We don't play. We expect things on paper.
Yeah.
We don't play this game on paper, and pressure makes you fold or turn to diamonds. And right now for Minnesota, they're folding a little bit here. They need to get away through this pressure. Two elims will help, but I mean, it's just Lunar there in that Nemesis form. They have to back off finally for the Orange. And again, we see Minnesota just losing players who are going to be crucial to these points. They'll get some here, but the Orange will be back in time before any major gains are made by the Golden Gophers.
Yeah, once again, you see that Graviton Surge and that M-Ray coming together, basically a better version of Pulse Bomb with the Graviton Surge. So it comes down to that ultimate combination as well, but it does sacrifice 2 ults in comparison to Syracuse only really using that Kitsune Rush in that fight. The Pulse Bomb went a little wide for Azer, but it happens. Lunar has the Annihilation, but the Overclock comes in from Mac.
Into Nemesis form. Here's a beat, from one of the Orange members, Saint, Lunar, Mac, and Azer. What's his name? Brivity and BPO all go down as I stutter over my words because I'm so enamored by how good that push was. It'll be a move that Saint gets rid of Rafa on, and Azer gets the last. A very good job by the Orange. I'd say a fairly good recovery by myself as they find a way to try and hold these last 4 minutes. Minnesota can't find anything on the offense once the Orange get going and use their ult, but now Minnesota has that ult trade going their way.
Yeah, Syracuse needs to really farm out for B-Dog here because that Ray is going to go in and will immediately take down players like Lunar, who already had to use that Nemesis form. Minnesota could go fast if they want to. Rafa just popping out that Ray, but B-Dog's been able to farm and get that Kitsune Rush. Azer as well, 8% to their Pulse Bomb to use going forward in this fight. There goes the Ray into the Kitsune Rush. That's what you wanted to see if you're a Syracuse fan.
Wow, for Minnesota, it's very easy to get into that good state with Rafa. Juno's ult gives so much, and it helps them so little when you do it wrong, but Minnesota's finally done it correctly. B-Dog tries to counter with the Kiriko ult, but it just doesn't last as long, and eventually the Gophers outlast. What a good job by Minnesota into that other in that other section. The place I'm from is really coming out
The
tonight.
Chicago came out a little bit there, Carson.
A little bit more of the Midwest, I'd say.
Yeah, well, you want to say Chicago for me?
Let's get back into this game. Lunar into Nemesis form, contesting at the final meter. Forward, Minnesota trying to get a big upset here on the Orange, who are currently seeded 4. They themselves 6. Mac and the only one to get a kill for the Orange squad. BPO, what's his name, and Vikovs all get another.
Wow.
What's his name? The M-Ray ult, so powerful. 54 seconds, Minnesota transfers into the 3-0 section.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that M-Ray ult, it's just so powerful, and that's what we ended up seeing, right? Every time that M-Ray popped ultimate, Syracuse lost the fight, and that comes down to a little bit of inexperience against the character, right? If you're Syracuse, even though M-Ray's been out for a while, he's still a character that most players are opting for the Soj instead of the M-Ray, and it just comes down to comfort, but because of that, you've gone up against Sojourn players, you've gone up against Overclock, you've gone up against how those players like to play. Haven't quite gone up against good players on M-Ray yet, and into that ultimate, into those play styles, you have to adapt and have to overcome how that character is played and how you have to counter that ultimate. It's going to be the same thing when Dominic starts coming back out, right? And you have that ultimate, which is going to be very, very different for players to really fight into. It's the same concept. Mizuki, a little different as a support, but being able to play with that ultimate compared to being aggressive and all that sort of jazz. But the point is, it's something that you have to adapt. It's something you have to change. And what's his name on this Emre has really been capitalizing on that, as well as BP0 on that Zarya. Like I said, basically having a better version of that pulse grav combination. And Syracuse, they were able to stall it down to sub 1 minute, so it's okay. Even if they cap in overtime, they'll still both have a draw, or both have an ability to compete for that winning victory. But it is something that you have to consider, right? Every time Syracuse tried to take that fight into the side of Minnesota, they were using that Ray, they were using that rally. And that's the strength of that Juno Brig. When you use those support ultimates sparingly and correctly, you have insane stable and insane pressure, even into a composition such as Kiri Lucio with that Ramattra.
Yeah, and thank golly we haven't had a draw yet, because then we would have to at least enter the Game 6 scenario, which is a thing, but we hope not to get there. Orange are going to capture very quickly that first bar, almost. Zarya pushing forward. Good job by Minnesota there to really get involved in that Orange backline, and it helps them a lot there. Supports have to back off. Mac and Luna are left without any support, and the buoy goes away. B-Dog and Ace are the last two there, and no life raft for the Orange. They lose their first team fight. Goes back down to 0 on the cap marker, and Minnesota really bringing the fight to the Orange here.
Yeah, this is an interesting swap from Lunar. Going over to the Winston, you're going into a Zarya and a Brig. This is a scary idea for Lunar, but it does give you more pressure onto that Emre and onto that backline. So I don't mind it for Lunar, but it is something to be very, very cautious of, because that Brig is a direct counter to any dive that you may want to do on their backline.
I honestly like to see Azer on a Genji here, because it just gives him more space. He knows how good of a Genji he is. It's his best character, and you want to see players play what they're good at, and I think it works in this comp. Either way, BPO gets rid of Saint. That's a big support loss for the Orange, as Azer off wide right there. Sorry, Bills fans, as the Orange back onto the site, trying to get a capture here. 2:33 remaining. Minnesota was already in groove. They already had the payload at this point. Rafa and Saint trade. Lunar goes down. No tanks for either. It's playing small ball. Kiriko Rush comes out. Mac gets rid of one. Again, they're pushing forward. Mac trying to get rid of the Juno in the back line. Chased by more Gophers. It just keeps the Brig away from the rest of the team as they're forced to support. And Mac doing a great job keeping them away, as the Orange will fully capture. What's his name goes down. The only one remaining on point. And well played. Mac keeping the supports away.
Yeah, I really like that from Syracuse. The rally comes in, though, from Veridity to immediately bring the tempo back, really stopping Syracuse from getting too aggressive. Immediately, you see the side of Minnesota, they're like, we get it. You capped that point, but we're not going to let you snowball us through the rest of the second point like we did to y'all. And that is exactly what they did. Immediately using that rally, immediately putting a halt to Syracuse's rest of their attack. And now they're going to be held at this archway. One support ultimate. Rafa has theirs, as well as this crazy good combo with the Emre and the Zarya. It's 4 minutes for Syracuse to move on to the second point here into a contest from Minnesota. There's the Ray.
Orange have 4 minutes to get it all the way to the first checkpoint here. Keep in mind, they have to get all the way to the end as well to try to Minnesota and try and get this in overtime. Gonna be the beat there from Saint. Sorry, a little aggression for me. You have to call that earlier if you're Saint. You need to do something a little better there. Poorly timed from the Orange. They might still make it out, because the same thing happened to Minnesota. BPO really needed to use an ult there. They were trying to save it, but they have such an advantage. Saint just switched to Zenyatta, which is a crazy in a team fight to say, but the Orange are going a little off the rails here. Lunar able to get rid of one in the form of Vixkoffs, and you have to imagine for the Syracuse squad, more plays like that, putting it back together and trying to find a way to overcome poorly timed plays is going to be what they're big at.
Yeah, I mean, Saint on this Zenyatta is going to have a lot of pressure with that Discord orb. Azer doesn't have that pulse bomb. I don't know what happened in that last fight, but now Syracuse, they get around the first two corners and the archway. One more corner, 3 minutes. Syracuse, they find a great pick onto the Zarya, though, and now they can look to just continue this forward. The Discord orb, that's 2 assists for Lunar.
Zenyatta is cooking right now, and Zenyatta with another kill on Vishkoffs. Have to imagine at a certain point, Saint's just tired of not getting enough kills. And now a team kill for the Orange. You know, I kind of like this comp in a really weird way. You need to learn how to play off meta, because that's the way you beat better teams than you, is just showing them weird looks and showing them how better you are at those weird looks. And you know what? I like that for the Orange. Minnesota isn't necessarily a better team. Right now, they've been playing fairly even. I have to say the Gophers doing a fantastic job. For the Orange, going to be all about target prioritization with that Zenyatta, and that's what they're going for here. Into the overclock, not able to get huge damage, enough to kill one, but it's going to help Lunar out, who gets Primal, and those ones that Mac attacked into the corner, he's able to get one. Azer gets rid of the Genji. No support around for Zarya. She eventually will go down, and she does. a weirdly shadowed part of the map. Lunar literally can't see the box that's right there and keeps bumping into it. But for the Orange, 3 minutes 30 seconds remain, and they are nearing the end, holding spawn against the Gophers.
A really good snowball for Syracuse getting onto this third point here, and now Minnesota needs to get out fast. There's the rally for their engage, but they're already about to die.
Immediately into that corner is Brick. She has to stop healing her teammates to prioritize herself. Tries to get some out. Sane is the only one that is going to go down there with the use of 2 ults. Back up top, Emre, 3. He's trying to do his best there, but the Orange have too much support on site. Nobody goes down somehow for the Orange. B-Dog very low. Sane not able to support very well with that Zenyatta Harmony orb, but went into that corner. It's Zarya trying to run away. She can't. Lunar gets rid of him. And the Orange capture force overtime here in game 2. Minnesota brought a fight, and the Orange brought one back.
Yeah, you know, I was worried about that Winston there at the start, and you could see where my worry came in, right? Before Saint switches over to that Zenyatta, it was sort of a difficult area for Lunar to continue that pressure. I mean, one little hit, one whip shot from that Brig, and you're basically out of luck. And we saw that a couple times, but then you have Saint switch over to that Zenyatta. Definitely a weirder pick, a character that is not best in the meta right now, but when you pair that with the damage from a Winston, right, when they jump in, they hit that jump, and you have a character that's so far back, right, you have that Zenyatta who's able to sit far enough backwards, you have that Discord orb, so you can engage on any target, whether it be Mac, or be Mac on the Sojourn, or Azer on the Tracer. You get really, really good pressure going out from that Zenyatta, so I like those switches from Syracuse. They looked comfortable on it. That's the biggest thing. They didn't panic switch. They looked comfortable. They looked like they had ideas into what they want to do and why they were doing it. Worked really, really well for them. They now have 2 minutes and 2 seconds over Minnesota, who's going to start on the attacking side, and it looks like to be no changes for their composition. Side of Syracuse, they're going to have Mac on the Cassidy instead of the Sojourn.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, is the Orange, or rather the Gophers mentality here, is the Orange are going to kind of switch into the Zarya as well. We'll talk more about that in a second, but you did actually just see Mac use a Rubik's Cube there in between games. I did not know he actually used it and solved it.
He does.
He unsolves it before the game, and he plays the game, and then he resolves it again, then unsolves it before the next. Orange have only 50 seconds to hold here. They're very good at this checkpoint. Now matching the Zarya. Lunar has done fantastic on Zarya. We haven't seen it from him all night, and it's a little bit of a free win card when he's on, and boy, let me tell you, he is on right now, doing a very good job. Pushes them back into the other side. That Zarya orb going to help get rid of Vishkov. Saint gets him himself. The Zarya orb, wow, fantastic. The Discord orb from Zenyatta, as they push again into that other section, and the Orange have to back off here a little bit as Azer is forced into that corner, trying to find a better angle at it as Lunar holds the door.
Yeah, Syracuse looking to be more of that poke-centric composition compared to the brawl coming out from Minnesota. Lunar stuck in a room, but it's going to be able to get themselves out and get the kill, but trades. Rafa finds 2 on the support line.
Yeah, the big thing there is, though, when you have a Zenyatta, your support line is just going to deteriorate. This is the ultimate maximum pressure ideal, whereas the Zen orb is going to be so big there, and I don't know if it would have mattered as we watched Lunar fly towards Veridity and punch them in the face and get rid of them anyway. That would have been the last contender, and overtime would have expired, but no capture progress for the Golden Gophers, which means the Orange have to just get on site and get a third.
Yeah, exactly. It's drawable for Minnesota, but they got to hold for 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Syracuse needs 1 tick. It's all it will take for them. And, I mean, if you're Syracuse here, I really don't think I would mind seeing the exact same composition again. But maybe get your Zenyatta, get your Kiriko, follow up that right side staircase, right? Get yourself in, use the Zarya to sort of just take all that damage, put your Zenyatta and Kiriko up that top right, sit up there, and then you really don't have to worry about the brawl from that Juno Brig that the side of Minnesota is running. And if you can flank them up to that right side, you get really good pressure, you get really good damage, you get a really good ability to support your team, and Lunar kind of just walks forward, takes some damage, builds up charge with those bubbles, and they're going to be able to cap that point. I don't really want to see Syracuse try to force this brawl. This Juno Brig has been really, really powerful inside of it, and taking a look at the compositions, Juno Kiriko, so less of a brawl, less of that Brig. I think that Brig was really important for Minnesota, but Syracuse playing B-Dog on the Ana.
You've heard of 2 birds, 1 stone. Have you heard of 2 birds with stones? It's Azer and Mac in the window trying to throw rocks down, essentially. Mac will go up. There's also a Ana up there. There's some serious tomfoolery happening right now for the Orange as they try and go from the skies. They can't get much of anything there. They'll stick with this partly. Mac wants to play some more Widowmaker. Lunar will push forward with the rest of this team into that corner. They force them back, and Minnesota opting not to take that control point, or can take that, rather, that control corner, which would have been big for them to get space. They might just capture it here. Zenyatta, or Zarya, excuse me, can't get back onto site. To get halfway through it, Orange still have pressure going on. They're going to back off and try and get rid of more on that other side. Zarya on for this Minnesota side. Doesn't want to be there, but has to contest at least a little bit more, because the Orange are mere moments away from getting this game too. B-Dog gets one. They're trying to jump on site, but it's just too much pressure from the Orange. Minnesota goes down 2-0 to your Syracuse University squad.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, Carson. If Minnesota plays the brig there, the way that Syracuse is playing, they take that fight in Hotel, and it's a fight win for them. But with that Kiriko swap, you see that change, right? Syracuse, they were a little uncomfortable in that Juno brig. It's been a while since Juno brig has been in meta, so it makes sense, right? But Minnesota very comfortable on that composition.
Sorry.
No, I saw it.
What?
Yeah. That's MRAY Ultimate, folks. That's it's a big firing laser of doom, and there's nothing you can really do about it. It just kind of you literally blow up. I mean, that's what it is. It's a high-powered laser.
Just you hear that cue, and it's just absolute despair. There's nothing you can do much about it. And for the Orange, they got through it very, very quickly on the defensive side. They did a good job supporting their team through that and making sure that MRAY went down when they went up. And Zenyatta was part of that with the Discord Orb, keeping them kind of into that other section and saying, hey, when this person ults, get rid of him, destroy him.
Yeah.
And that's a very good job when you have a lot of targeted attacks. Zenyatta supports that kind of meta. It supports that poke that they were going for.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call it poke. It was more like, I mean, they were playing with snipers. I don't really know how to describe it other than it wasn't a true poke, it wasn't a true brawl, it wasn't a true dive, but the Orange found a middle equilibrium that ended up being perfect when they finally got it going, and they discovered it about halfway through that attack phase.
Yeah, really good from that Syracuse squad to sort of make some adaptations, not panic swaps, but genuine adaptations, good value with it, and ending up finding that victory. Like I said, I think the biggest thing is when you move on to Kings Row in general for Syracuse, one of the things to sort of go back home and think about is stop forcing the composition for the entirety of point 2, right? We see them switch late a lot of times on point 2, and so they don't have the ultimates to match, and so it does come into a little bit of a struggle, but I think that's the biggest takeaway for Syracuse.
It's Lucas Stolman, that tank that you saw there in the end playing Zarya, very good tank, one of the probably top 2 in the PEC, I'd say.
Yeah.
King Donut, the only rival, and I don't know if King Donut is better than Lunar most days. Syracuse, New York, not a Syracuse, New York native, from LA, aerospace engineering major. He's a very smart guy, and you tend to not meet a lot of guys like his level of intelligence outside of Overwatch, at least. I'm not saying he's a bad Overwatch player. Whoa, wait.
Write it down.
He's a very high intelligence Overwatch player, but I think that's dwindled by how good he is at what he does.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas as a player and as a person, he has overcome a lot to not only stay here at Syracuse, but also to continue to compete on this team. He's always been a phenomenal player for this roster. He's been around since the start of the time as a club player. He started off as a support player. That's also one of the funny things is 3/5 of this team were originally support players before they moved into their roles that they shine on now. Lunar was one of them.
One of the support players is formerly a tank.
Yes.
Ben played tank his entire time at his previous college. Which
yes, he did. And Saint actually also played tank for a free agent team for a while.
Do you know where you played? Where he played?
Not off the top of my head.
Well,
I'm going to confuse where he played with where Mac played. So,
yeah, Mac played at
DePaul.
Yeah, Mac played at DePaul.
Mac has always been a DPS player.
Yes, Mac has always.
He is the only
you
true
look
player.
At Mac, you don't look at Mac and you say that guy. He looks very much like a DPS player. in no bad way, but you know guys who are so confident in themselves and are so good at what they do. Mac is one of them. He very much believes that what he does is good at the top level of collegiate, and he's right for the most part. I mean, you look at all of his stats; they compare with some of the best there. And Mac is a very sure of himself guy in a very good way. You want the kind of guys like Mac on your team because you know that when things start to go bad, they are the kind of guys that believe in themselves enough to where they can and to separate themselves from bad mental. They can keep you going. They can lead by example.
Yeah, and Mac is one of those players. He's one of those people, right, in general, that you're like, how are you good at everything?
Yeah.
I'm sure we all have that one friend. It's like they pick up any video game and they're already in the top rank. Mac picked up Deadlock when it first released and was already like top 3 in the world in some characters. And it's like, all right, man, like you just started playing the game. Mac is one of those players in general where he just picks up a game and he gets it, right? He understands how to play and he understands what he wants to do. And it comes down to that intelligence. It comes down to that adaptability. It's right. It's sure, you know how to, click buttons, right? At the end of the day, he's a hit scan player. So
Yeah.
that's what he does. He clicks buttons, he clicks heads, but exactly. But it also comes into understanding a lot of time, right? Especially on a character like Sojourn, how far can I engage? How much can I back up? What can I do? What can I not do? What angles can I take? There's a lot of, in a sense, geometric value that you need to understand on a character and a lot of game understanding, game map understanding that Mac has. And that's why you have these players who are able to log into different games, log into different titles, and do such a good job in them because it's down to that map knowledge.
Yeah, and it's just down to the general adaptability and intelligence that I think he has. You mentioned it earlier. He's good at everything he does, where he learns it so quickly. He's so good at understanding the basics and fundamentals of things.
And he can solve a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, I mean, he can also solve a Rubik's Cube. That was right there earlier. But for Minnesota, I think the biggest thing to reply to the Syracuse squad that's kind of finally found their groove is just playing what you like. At a certain point, you have to wonder, it's going to be, how do we get rid of something that they do very well? We were just talking about Mac. Minnesota opts to ban Sojourn, which he's just going to play Emre, I'd have to guess, at this point in the season where you want to learn. But you're forcing them off what they want to do. You're trying to find a way to do what you want to do. And as the Minnesota squad has proven very earlier before, they are very good at what they do generally is changing. They are very good at dealing with bans, dealing with everything, and finding a way to say, hey, let's try this, and let's keep it going. They've got upsets in them, and you may see something come Las Vegas that we haven't seen for this team really anywhere.
Yeah, every team is different at LAN. I mean, at the end of the day, and that'll be a conversation for Vegas. I mean, you'll look at a team that shows up, and you're like, where was that all season? And they're like, I don't know, but we figured it out. And then they'll come back into the regular season and do nothing. And it's just, it's funny, but it's just a different environment, right, Carson? At any LAN, whether it be in Vegas or otherwise, every LAN, that sort of, what happens in a player's head, what happens in their mental changes drastically. And it can be good, but it also can be bad.
Yeah, and they're not even technically, I think, the best Overwatch team in their state right now. And that's weird when you think about Minnesota because you think, oh, well, what other school is there? I believe it's Minnesota Durham.
This is true.
The Bulls. I know they're the Bulls. I don't know.
I forget Minnesota's a state half the time.
That's a really interesting
I forget the majority of the Midwest exists.
I guess you're from the South.
So.
That's totally different. I'm like I think of like, what are the first 6 states I can think of? Illinois, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. Like,
that's crazy.
It's a different place. And
where are you from again?
Illinois. Illinois. Esperanza here for the Orange as they move on to a push map that they are very familiar with. And now have a 4-game losing streak on right now because they can't seem to really get it on push, it feels like, specifically here.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, really quickly, Illinois got Houston in the March Madness game, so, best of luck there. I actually have them winning that, but moving forward there.
Certainly.
Do you not?
I mean, I do on my bracket.
Yeah, I have Illinois
do I
beating
really
Houston
believe in
there.
them? No.
I believe it. I think Illinois is a nice, it's a hidden team. Like, it's a hidden state. It's a hidden gem.
I don't know if it's a hidden. The third biggest city in the country is in Illinois. Fine, Chicago, if you want to hear it so badly. But
I love you, Carson.
This is unrelated entirely. Illinois is a great state. You have plenty of towns like Normal, which I lived in last summer for my internship, actually. Sandwich, Egypt, Berlin, Cairo. Egypt and Cairo are 2 miles apart. What is the other one I can think of? Washington, D.C., district. It's like District County, Washington. Illinois is a lovely place, but we'll get back into this very quickly. Get out of the Midwest. Syracuse here with a Zarya ban, which is very interesting because that means they're playing Winston, basically.
Yeah. I mean, Illinois may not be original, but Syracuse is. Syracuse has a lot of original compositions in the back of their hat, and we talked about it earlier. They like to play meta, but they also have some compositions where they don't need to play meta. They have some more niche, more comfortable compositions, and though they don't always work, they do have a purpose in this Syracuse squad. There's a reason they have them in their deck of cards, and for Syracuse, banning that Zarya after the Sojourn ban has been made, you're going to see that Diva. You're going to see that Winston. That is just what they're comfortable on, right? You have that Lucio Curie as well come forward. And we could see something almost, okay, never mind. I kind of got a little bit too far ahead, but what I was going to say is you might see something exactly what we saw in Ilios, which is basically what we're seeing here, where Syracuse is playing this Lucio Curie, Diva, Emre, Vendetta, but Minnesota Roadhog with a Juno Brig, a brawl style of composition. This is going to be what I like to call the deathmatch composition, where you have one side of Brawl, which is your Juno Brig, everyone else is going to do their own thing and just try to screw with Syracuse.
Yeah, this is pretty much the evil Brawl, if you were from Minnesota, is the best way I can describe it. It is very harmful. Roadhog, if you are, honestly, I don't know how many people watching who don't play the game as much are familiar with his rebuild and his retool, if you will, which has happened 3 years ago now, but Roadhog has not been relevant for 4. So it's sort of, hey, how do you approach that? And for the Orange, it's an understanding that Roadhog is just going to take a lot of damage, and you do really have to do the same thing you do with any other tank. You don't approach it any differently. You have to find a way to just get uneven and understand that Roadhog is just going to bring you in, and you just gotta defense matrix and hit S. That's all you have to do right now to beat Roadhog in the competitive meta. For the Orange, it's all about getting rid of supports as 1 DPS goes down against the Minnesota.
Yeah, Roadhog hasn't been viable since 2020. Roadhog and Wrecking Ball back in Overwatch 1.
I was 14.
Okay. Syracuse has the cart in their favor, but this is where that Roadhog's gonna get value, is they're gonna be able to put a lot of pressure on the Lunar and really just sort of chip away at that mech, but they're not always gonna be able to get that kill because of that defense matrix. Barely gets out alive, but Syracuse still has control at this point as they're just slowly moving that cart forward.
Very well done.
Oh, goodbye, Mac.
Very well done by Lunar there, as Mac's grenade flies at him in the form of a dash and gets him, unfortunately, there at the end. But Orange get that forward spawn, 53 meters now, just over halfway to the end here. And the big thing about forward spawn for push, Orange have the ability to now spawn a little bit forward, into the other section. They have the advantage there now. When they go down, they'll come back faster to point than Minnesota will.
Yeah, and they have ultimates to spare as well here. Syracuse finding that first checkpoint in sub 1 minute, only 55 seconds, and they find it. Mac popping the laser beam of death and despair. This shot finds Saint, though. Mac just not able to live. Azor goes and finds one in return.
Lunar going into this corner, trying to push their way back out. It's a force onto Juno, but not enough really support there for him as they've all gone down at this point. Oh, goodness. That's what Roadhog is very good at. It's getting rid of the end of characters' lives, gets that kind of finishing blow off a little bit quicker, and that's what happens there. Azor goes down as well to a Roadhog clobber, and 2-0 lead for the Orange. They've got forward spawn, though, so they will have the ability to fight this before Minnesota is able to really get any sort of push off. Very good job by Minnesota there, but how do the Orange reply? With a ult disadvantage that will slowly turn back into equal, but it's just 5 on 3. I don't think it will matter much. When you have 3, you have enough to deal with 5 for the Orange.
Yeah, and I mean, Syracuse can find an early pick on one of these supports. It'll be really good for him, and they'll be able to win this fight. Lunar does have the self-destruct as needed, but a full bingo board, Yahtzee, ready for the side of Minnesota as they choose to use any one of those ultimates. They're fighting on the bridge here. There goes the blade to start it off.
Golly gee, for one more, it's Mac who's playing very afraid into that other corner, and there's good reason. Vishkov's with 2 for the Golden Gophers. B-Dog and Mac, we're watching Azor go top down. A little bit more for Azor as they try and get rid of one, but just wipe out gameplay from Minnesota. Vishkov's gets one more, a 3K for their Genji. Nearly 4 as they got really contributed into the last one. Saint's the only one that makes it alive on that Waylay.
Yeah, they're going to find that first point, and it will be just a few meters behind now, 27 meters, if I do my math correctly, to match themselves up to where Syracuse managed to find their way. Saint does have the ultimate here ready to be used on this Wu Yang, but there goes a full fledge of ultimates.
Syracuse going to go for one. Not enough somehow for Minnesota right now. They lose one, and Emre doing a good job in the front line, but Azor goes to the back. Here comes one, trying to find their ult. It's Azor. Going for the slash, gonna miss everybody, but it forces Minnesota backwards. Again up top. They make some noise. Into their end comes another Minnesota player. Saints able to deal with the flank, but the mech goes down. This could be a big swing, for the Gophers, and it is BP Overridity. Their combination on point gets them off, and the Gophers have themselves a very good push. They get a forward spawn. They're primed to match the Orange. Saint the only one to make it out again.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a couple ultimates to use here. Saint just trying to live through, and there's the lead taken for Minnesota. 84 and counting to the 80 from Syracuse here. B-Dog switching over to this Ana. Going to be very dangerous into this Roadhog from behind. There's the anti-nade. That's what I was talking about. B-Dog with this anti-nade is going to be very, very impressive into the Roadhog.
Azer just slid on that roof, by the way.
Yes.
Full Metal Gear Solid to get into that back line. That is a very big pick. It'll open up Minnesota's defense in a fantastic job to capitalize by the Orange. Lunar gets rid of what's-his-name. Gosh, that was absurd. You don't see that very often in those kind of plays in this game. And Acer goes full stealth mode over the top, and just not enough time for Minnesota. They lose their support, and BPO was not alive. Switching to Diva now, though.
Yeah, I always think you just forget the name of the Emre whenever you say what's his name, but you're not. You're saying the name correctly as it's put there. Syracuse still keeping this self-destruct, which is good for them. They haven't had to use it yet. Veridity going to be close to this rally. They're looking to kill them out as they know that ult's going to be there, but they've lost some members in return.
2 for the Orange, 2 for the Gophers, but more importantly, Syracuse has lost, or rather Minnesota's lost their big ult there. Saint able to get one out here. It's going to be big damage out. They're able to get one. Kind of pushing alone as a support right now. Not too often you see that. Here comes a tank. Will Saint be able to get there in time? I mean, they are playing Scooby-Doo doors right now as they back into that corner once again. Saint forward, trying to push him to the other end. Lunar going to get rid of one in that other section, but again, just fantastic play for Minnesota to keep themselves alive, but how long can they do it against the Syracuse squad with so much pressure getting put on them? Lunar pushing this one forward. They're about 14 meters away from that lead, trying to find it again. Here comes Max Alt, top down. They get one, going for another. He gets 2. What a play from the Chicago player formerly again. A full team kill for the Orange. Absolute wipeout, but courtesy of Mac.
Yeah, you know, what makes Emre ult scarier, Carson? A nanoed Emre ultimate. B-Dog throwing that nano in on the Mac made it even more dangerous to deal with here. 4 ultimates from Minnesota, but now Syracuse back on the lead once more. An overinvestment is what Syracuse is looking for, and a good kite as well. A self-destruct just to get something started, and 2 members fall.
I mean, that forces them back, certainly. I haven't seen it used offensively since about 2019. And, hey, you know what? It kind of worked out for Minnesota there. 2 more fall, and now the last tank, they're going to go down. Wow, I haven't seen that work in so long. Veridity gets rid of Lunar at the end there. You don't see that one often.
No, you really don't. I mean, both these teams are kind of just throwing things out there and things that haven't been seen in a very long time. Syracuse's Saint gonna be on Brig. The Brig Curie here instead of that Brig Juno, so a little bit more healing, but less sustained damage going out for this squad. We're still at about 2.5 minutes left here, Carson, with this, and Syracuse's Azer gets a little bit of pressure, but what's-his-name goes down to Mac.
What's-his-name is such a good name, by the way.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that as a caster. Mac getting rid of them with the grenade, but BPO able to get rid of Saint, and they need to pray right now, no pun intended, because there's no support on that back line. Azer able to get rid of one, though, with the blade going for a second. We haven't seen a big Azer blade in a long time, and a double is a nice concession for us as we've been hungry for one for a little long. 120 meters for the Orange. Minnesota needs 17 to get it to a tie, but right now, back in the offense is Syracuse. Azer able to get rid of BPO before one of their teammates goes down. V-Dog able to flash back, and with 2 minutes remaining, the Orange are back on the offense with a forward push.
Very good job for Syracuse getting themselves back into forward spawn and the forward push against Minnesota here. What's his name? The Emre online if they choose to use this one here. Lunar can look to eat the majority of it with that defense matrix, but here it goes. Mac is going to be late to the fight, but a good re-engage as they're forcing Saint out in this small room.
Everybody stuck into that corner right there. Going to be a lot of damage very quickly. A shield's going to help them. Here comes the rally. One more self-destruct offensively used again. Gives Syracuse the time to back up, but what it does do is lets Minnesota centralize their defense. The rally will end. Orange still pushing forward. They have a Kiriko rush, which will expire momentarily. Lunar with the ult has the ability to basically come back a second time. Saint gets rid of Veridity. Going into BPO now is Lunar trying to get rid of them. They go back up top to try and deal with the ult. Lunar's trying to force them out, but he lives just long enough. They get rid of one. The mech goes down. They'll use self-destruct here. Vishkovs and Saint gets rid of Saint in the back line, and very good work by the Gophers behind enemy lines to get rid of one, but BPO stuck there, losing the mech now, and goes down immediately to Mac, and suddenly the Orange have retaken momentum. Ult from Mac into that corner, trying to go for more. They'll get some more. Mac, fantastic job again with the ult. So much damage can be outputted so quickly, and he's displaying that. 40 seconds remain. Orange have the bot.
Yeah, you know, I was worried there, Carson. We didn't see it, but Vishkov over there on that Genji was in the backline of Syracuse. Found 3 kills in that fight where Lunar was up against that Emre as we were watching, but Syracuse a really good stable in that front line. They kited back, they got themselves in the fight, and now they're 2 meters away from victory.
Defense Matrix coming in for Lunar as they push on. BPO loses the mech. The heart of this Minnesota Golden Gophers team down. Saint able to get rid of one in the form of their Genji, but RNG, Azer down, the captain of the team. There's a double bash. They get stunned like a Rule 1 in Rocket League. Lunar Mac and Lunar in the scoreboard as 3 go down. Not much time for the Gophers as they reach the end of the line. It's a close one, but 3-0 for the Orange.
Syracuse, a really good job taking that victory. Like you said, got a little scary there at the end, right? Minnesota had a really good job, the really good pushing themselves back in, but Syracuse finding their way back into the fight. Mac on Emre with the ultimate and the nano on top of it. That's how you make that thing even scarier.
I mean, come on, this just makes total sense. So much damage output by the Orange there. And Mac got in every kill there. 3 kills, 2 assists. You like to see a player who knows how to play with his team, and with that Ana there, they do a fantastic job, and it's a good win to give you here for your final one here, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really good for Syracuse, right, to get themselves that win against sort of that right there in the middle team, right? It's good for Syracuse. It puts themselves sort of back in the swing of things. They have that match against Kansas, who is seeded 5, against Syracuse is seeded 4, so that will determine where they end up being in Vegas. But this was a great way for Syracuse to really feel a little bit more confident in some of their compositions, in some of their characters, in what they want to do with flexibility, and what they want to do when they need to make changes as well, right? We saw Syracuse play the Ana, the Zenyatta, the Wu Yang, the Genji, the Vendetta, the Winston, the Diva, the Zarya. We saw all sorts of compositions or all sorts of characters picked out tonight from this Syracuse squad, and it shows the versatility that they have and therefore the ability that they're going to be able to make in terms of flexibility long-term into not only Kansas next week, but also into Vegas, into the finals.
They're fighting for a CCC bid. They'll have LCQs, and they'll also have the PEC to fight through. A lot of teams hungry there as we head to Vegas in very due time to see, can they make it to the end in May? Can they make that national championship? Can we win a PEC title? It's a coveted thing, really, and a lot of teams going for it. Syracuse Rocket League and Smash already qualified, I believe, for it through CRL and through, CCC East Qual, them in Stony Brook, but the Orange have a fantastic roster here in Overwatch, and when they get things going, they could truly be one of these top 20 teams that ends up in May and ends up headed to Waco, Texas. But we'll have to see in due time. This Orange squad still got a game in the regular season before they put their cards down in Las Vegas.
It's going to be an interesting one to see, but that's going to wrap it up for Overwatch here, Carson.
It's been a very good 2 years with you, Ryan, on this Overwatch broadcast, and it'll look different next year. It'll look different in due time, but for now, I'm Carson Cass with Ryan Blankenhorn. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the Valorant stream, which will be Ryan's true final stream. I will not be there, but thank you very much for watching, and continue to be kind.